So in chapter 339, right at the end of the Hunter x Hunter anime, Jing is sitting atop the world tree with Gon, talking about the Dark Continent, where this giant tree actually came from. He says you need to meet at least 4 conditions to reach the Dark Continent. You need permission, the means, qualifications, and a contract. He doesn't have any of them yet, but no rush. It's about the journey, not the destination. The manga kept going after the anime ended, albeit quite sporadically, and within just a few chapters we learned that Jing wasn't the only guy planning a trip to the DC. Beyond Netero and Pariston Hill had the exact same idea as it turns out, and these guys aren't a couple of stop-and-smell-the-roses lollygaggers like good old Jing freaks. They've been working and scheming for years to meet all those conditions he mentioned, and those schemes are about to bear fruit. Their biggest scheme of all, outplay the world government, and meet those first 2 conditions at the same time, permission and the means, by conspiring with a foreign king by the name of Nasubi Hueguo Ro. So that's how the Kakin royal family gets pulled into our story, with King Nasubi simply being one of the keys needed to open the way to the Dark Continent. And there are still readers today who are kind of stuck in that mindset, that Nasubi is an instrumental character, a means to an end. His family, not that important. The War of Succession, all his children get caught up in, just filler. A bunch of no-names killing each other that we gotta sit through before we get to the Dark Continent proper. I'm going to argue pretty strongly against that idea. If you look at the chapters we've gotten since the anime ended, there are a couple about Jing and Pariston and Beyond and the Zodiacs, and we had those pages about the 5 calamities. And there was the whole fight between Ahsoka and Crollo, sure, but the vast majority of these 61 chapters have been about the conflict within Nasubi's family, which we call the Succession War. That's what's going on. And as of chapter 400, which is where we're at as I'm writing this, the war is nowhere near to being over. We're maybe a third of the way in, if that. So this war, and not anything on the Dark Continent, is what the manga is going to be about for the next 100 chapters, probably more than that. This is the main plot. This is Hunter x Hunter now. And from where I'm sitting, that's a good thing. Admittedly, the Succession Wars got a lot of setup, a lot of new characters to get your head around. But you know what else had a lot of setup and new characters? Chimera Ant arc. This new guy Morel shows up and he's getting more fights than Gon or Killua. You had to get a handle on the royal guards with their competing visions for the king. You had to follow the king's competitive board game career. And it wasn't just them, the little guys were important too. Liol, Welfin, and Akalgo, just to name 3, all had their own goals, motivations, and perspectives. We spent time in each of their heads, getting to know them, figuring out their place in this whole web of characters and conflicts, watching them make their own deductions based on the info that they had at the time, and it was awesome. Seeing these smaller stories play out and intersect with one another was just a lot of fun, in my opinion, and it all ties in beautifully to the arc as a whole. Obviously that arc wasn't filler just because it was in some sense standing between us and Gon finally meeting up with Jing. If we skipped it all because we were impatient to see Jing sooner, we'd be missing out on one of the greatest story arcs in manga. That's what I think about when I hear people say that they just want to get to the Dark Continent already. The Succession War is even more ambitious than the Chimera Ant arc, and so far it's really good, like as good as the manga's ever been. If you're so impatient to see the arc after this one that you can't enjoy this feast Togashi's cooking up for us, you gotta take your eyes off the horizon. Remember what Jing said, what's important is the journey, not the destination. With that in mind, what I want to do is offer a little recap of the post-anime chapters with a focus on the Kakin royal family, beginning with King Nasubi and then moving on to his children. I'm going to cover everything that happens from the lens of how it relates to them, which will be everything that happens because again, they're the main plot. If you read through these chapters only once, maybe not giving these Hueguo Ros your full attention, maybe hoping that this was just a B-plot that would end soon so Gon could come back into the story and relearn Nen and change his Nen type to specialist so he's even stronger now and then he can fight Brion and Hellbell on the Dark Continent. I hope I can convince you to start over, look at it with fresh eyes. You just might get as excited about the Succession War as I am. So without further ado, let's get back to the king and see how this all gets started. It's chapter 340, just after the anime. Nasubi Hueguo Ro, I'm just gonna pronounce it like that by the way, it might not even be close. Anyway, he posts a video to iTube saying the Kakin Empire is going to the Dark Continent, something that's been forbidden by V5 for hundreds of years. V5 represents the 5 great powers of the world, and now they're in an awkward spot because if they let him do it, they look weak for not enforcing the ban. But what else are they gonna do? There's the military option, but Nasubi just became a global inspiration with his big declaration, and he says he's hired the son of Isaac Netero, so he's also cashing in on all the goodwill people had for the funny old man who punched good. People around the world are already volunteering to get on this ship, the Black Whale, and join the grand adventure into the unknown. So V5 finds a third option: invite Kakin to the big kids table, turning V5 into V6, rescind the ban, but set stipulations on how Nasubi's little trip is gonna work. The 200,000 civilians who can board this thing all have to get off at the new continent, which is just an uninhabited island a little bit off the map, not a part of the Dark Continent at all. But they'll all be told that they made it to the Dark Continent. They get dropped off to start a settlement there, and then Nasubi gets to send a real team to the DC on Morel's boat, with the agreement that whatever treasures they find over there, V6 gets to divvy them up fairly. So now, permission to go there, check. The means to go there, also check. The DC is supposed to have such amazing treasures that if Kakin were to monopolize them, it could skew the whole international balance of power. They've got food that extends your lifespan, rocks that put out tons of energy, that sort of thing. The former V5 mostly think that this mission is doomed, and that Nasubi is just going to waste a lot of his own money and manpower trying to get at this stuff. But just in case, the Zodiacs will serve as chaperones to make sure that Kakin honors the agreement and doesn't hog the loot. The Zodiacs are willing to take on this basically impossible suicide mission because Isaac already asked them to in a recorded message made before his death, and they're ride or die for the funny old man. You see, Isaac Netero ordered his son Beyond not to make any DC trips while he still drew breath. Beyond's actually wanted to go there for decades. He's been biding his time all along and working with Periston to assemble the specialized team he'd need to help him take on the Dark Continent. Periston's organizing the team and Beyond's paying them. Just like that, you've got qualifications check and a contract check. That's 4 out of 4. Beyond and Periston then got in cahoots with Nasubi and rigged this whole scenario, only waiting to pull the trigger until Isaac happened to die. And quick sidebar about that. Periston actually sabotaged the ant extermination team by deliberately sending hunters to the wrong assignments based on existing intel, something Morel noticed way back in chapter 234. So that turned up the pressure on Isaac to solve the crisis faster, since it wasn't being contained properly and the responsibility was all on him. Morel thinks Periston's screwing up the mission by giving contracts to hunters who've promised to vote for him, but we know Periston didn't actually care about getting elected, so that wasn't the motivation. He was actually putting his finger on the scale to make the extermination mission harder to increase the chance that Isaac would die in the course of it, also that he and Beyond could move forward with their plan. But don't feel bad for the old man, he got the fight of his life out of it and that's all he wanted. As far as he's concerned, it worked out great. Thank you, Periston. Anyway, that's what Beyond and Periston got out of this little conspiracy. They've met all the conditions to reach the DC. When they arrive, Beyond plans to break free from the Zodiacs guarding him. Periston has his own plan to break him out using his spy in the Zodiacs, but Beyond doesn't even know about that. Anyway, he breaks free, meets up with his team, and explores the unknown to his heart's content. But what did Nasubi get out of it? Well, he got a lot more popular. People around the world love him now thanks to his cool iTube video. He got his country into V6, which gives it a lot more legitimacy and sway on the world stage. Maybe the settlement on the new continent could be worth something. Maybe Beyond's team can bring back something from the Dark Continent if they don't go rogue or if Hellbell doesn't eat them all. So all that stuff is okay, but none of it is exactly why he took the deal Beyond offered him and played out this scenario the way Periston drew it up. No, he took the deal because it got 200,000 foreigners onto his boat. It's a trap. This whole Dark Continent expedition is a trap. So that panel looks pretty bad, but we're skipping ahead here. Let's back it up for a second. All the way back to Plato's Republic. This is a philosophical dialogue. I'm serious, by the way, we have to talk about this for a second. It's a dialogue on the subject of what is justice? How should society work? Who should be in charge of it? That kind of thing. We're going to focus on that last part, who should rule. In Book 6, Socrates famously says the state is like a ship. The people who are good at fighting or scheming to get control of the ship are not the people who'd actually be the best at piloting it. Skilled pilots spend their time studying and stargazing, so fighting and scheming just aren't in their skill set. Likewise, the people who are good at rising to power over a state are not, according to Socrates, the people who'd actually be the best at ruling it. This metaphor of the ship of state, which Plato didn't come up with, by the way, let me know in the comments if you know where it's from, because you checked Wikipedia, the metaphor has enjoyed pretty constant popularity for about 2,500 years. You can also verify that on Wikipedia. And believe it or not, what Nasubi's doing here is a play on that ancient idea. He's turning the metaphor into something literal. This ship is so huge that it doesn't just represent a state for the sake of a thought experiment, it really is a state unto itself. How many civilians did he bring on board? 200,000. How many people lived in the city-state of classical Athens? About 200,000. Well, look at that. The fight over control of the black whale is the metaphor for civil war in Athens, and a real full-scale simulation of civil war in Athens at the same time. And this thing is fully functional, both as a metaphor for a state and as a real state. It's got a hierarchy of levels, with the rulers literally at the top and the poor folk literally at the bottom of society. It's got cops and a justice system in miniature. It's got an army in miniature led by Prince Benjamin. It's got organized crime and disorganized crime. It's the ship of state that is a state, and it's got everything you'd need to throw a nice big civil war to see who ends up steering the thing. See, contrary to Socrates, Nasubi thinks being good at fighting and scheming your way to the top is a good qualification for a leader. That's how his ancestors always gotten it done, and they've passed something down to him called the Seed Urn Ceremony, which is powered by the lingering Nen after death of Kakin's first king. All of the potential heirs to the throne participate in the Seed Urn Ceremony, they fight, the survivor becomes king. But if they just fought a tournament or something, that wouldn't give you the best king, because a ruler doesn't rule only by physical strength. They need to fight over who rules the state by fighting over who rules the state. In other words, an all-out civil war. And that's why Nasubi needs the black whale. If his children fought an all-out civil war across Kakin, the country would be devastated. That's not what he wants. The whole point of picking the best king is to help Kakin prosper. It defeats the purpose if you kill everyone. But if you've created a country in microcosm, populated mostly by a bunch of foreigners you don't care about to begin with, you can have your Kakin civil war without wrecking the joint, and you can even have it without the international community finding out what went down. They're way out on a boat. None of these people are ever going home. At worst, maybe the ship sinks very mysteriously. There's only a few survivors, including the new king, of course, and nobody has to know what really happened. This is what Nasubi got out of the deal. 200,000 sacrifices and the privacy to let things get crazy without consequences. He has his 14 children perform the Seed Urn ceremony, sticks them on the boat, and tells them it's a free-for-all. The survivor of the voyage will be the next king. By the way, Kakin uses prince and king in a gender-neutral sense, so his daughter Camilla is also a prince and also wants to become king. Anyway, as far as the guy who owns the boat is concerned, that's what the boat is for. The settlement on the new continent doesn't matter. There might not be any survivors to make a settlement anyway. The real trip to the Dark Continent doesn't matter. Nasubi knows that Beyond can't be trusted once he makes it to the DC. He's a smart guy, and he's fine with that. His speech for iTube about conquering the unknown for the sake of humanity was just a sham. He was never interested in the Dark Continent. He just wanted to fill up his murder boat and then sail it out far enough that he doesn't have to think about witnesses. So that's Nasubi's role in the story. He built a floating city-state so his kids could destroy it in the process of selecting the next king. We're almost done, but I do want to talk about the room full of weird sarcophagi, so bear with me for another couple minutes. In chapter 371, we see Nasubi laying Momose to rest in a sarcophagus, saying she's still alive in a sense and she'll feed the great tree of Kakin. We can speculate that this is part of the Seed Urn ceremony, and that somehow the losers are going to feed their spirit to the winner once the war is over and all the sarcophagi are full, echoing the mythical Chinese worm toxin that inspired this whole ceremony. Basically, the idea was to cram a bunch of poisonous snakes in a small container that all eat each other, and then the last snake left was supposed to have hyper-concentrated poison. Now, some people have pointed out that there are 14 sarcophagi here, so they ask, is Nasubi actually planning for all of his kids to die, and then this thing will empower Nasubi himself somehow? That would sort of fit with that Goya painting we see he's got of Saturn devouring his son. Maybe his kids are just sacrifices for him too. Well, he's sacrificing most of them one way or another. But basically, I don't think we have enough info here to draw that conclusion. Maybe there's 14 because the 13 losers will go in plus Nasubi himself to empower the winner, meaning he plans to die at the end. Or maybe there's just one designated for each of them and it works with only 13 filled. Or the winner might go into their sarcophagus too and that's where it does the empowering. We don't know. But however this thing actually works, we've seen inside Nasubi's head, we've heard what he says to Halkenberg, more on that in the Halkenberg video later. And I think he's sincere about wanting the strongest ruler for his country. He wants Kakin to prosper into the future, and inevitably that means passing the torch. You kill all your kids, you got no heir. Even if you could lengthen his life somehow, if you keep the same ruler around forever, you stagnate. Keep using this ceremony to select a better one, you grow. Plus, if he just wanted them all dead, there'd be no need to select the strongest ruler from among them, which I've just explained is the whole point of the boat they're on. So no, I don't think Nasubi wanting to kill all of his kids is a twist that we'll see happen. So, with that bit of speculation addressed, we're now done with Nasubi, the guy responsible for literally all of the carnage to follow. We've gotten things kicked off, and now we're on to the princes. And where better to start than Prince Wobel? She's the one being guarded by Kurapika, after all. I haven't said Kurapika's name in this whole video. Did you know he's the main character? Anyway, thanks for watching, I'll see you next time, bye!